Begin this morning in Chicago with the Democratic National Convention and the passing of the torch within the party. President Biden highlighted the first day of the convention, addressing fellow Democrats last night, where he urged his party and the nation to elect Vice President Harris as president. Tomorrow will mark exactly 1 month since Mr. Biden announced he would not seek re-election.
Earlier in the night, Vice President Harris made an unexpected appearance on stage. She gave brief remarks praising the president for his half-century of service in public office. In his speech last night, which ended after midnight on the East Coast, Mr. Biden spent time reflecting on his career while looking ahead to the future. Here are some of the highlights from the president's speech.
But democracy has prevailed. Democracy has delivered. And now democracy must be preserved. Selecting Kamala was the very first decision I made when I became our nominee. And it was the best decision I made my whole career. Most diverse cabinet in history, including the first black woman of South Asian descent to serve as vice president. And will soon serve as the 47th President of the United States. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you. For 50 years, like many of you, I've given my heart and soul to our nation. It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more.
Let's begin this hour with NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. You can see he is at the DNC in Chicago. Gabe, thanks for joining us this morning. So let's start there on the president's speech. It was one really he didn't expect to be making, as recently as last month. But walk us through some of the other highlights of his speech, as well as who else we heard from on day one of the convention.
Hi there, Savannah. Good morning. Well, it wasn't so much that he didn't expect to give that speech. He may have expected to give it just later on in the convention as accepting the nomination. Instead, he gave it on the first night of the DNC. It was an emotional speech at times from President Biden. And we also heard from Hillary Clinton yesterday, from rising Democratic star Jasmine Crockett, as well as NBA coach Steve Kerr. But front and center, we heard from President Biden, and his message was one of trying to tie Vice President Kamala Harris to the successes of his administration. Take a listen to some more of what he had to say.
Think of the message he sends around the world when he talks about America being a failing nation. He says we're losing. He's the loser. He's dead wrong. The vote of each of us cast this year will determine whether democracy and freedom will prevail. It's that simple. It's that serious. And the power is literally in your hands. History is in your hands.
There you heard the president making the case against Donald Trump. Now, overnight, the president heading to California on vacation, saying that the highlight of the night for him was the introduction by his daughter, Ashley. Savannah?
So, Gabe, as we mentioned, Vice President Harris made that appearance on stage ahead of President Biden's remarks a little earlier in the evening. What was her brief message to Democrats?
Well, certainly it was a brief message of unity and really trying to thank President Biden for his role in all this. Let's listen to some more of what she had to say.
Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you. I see the beauty of our great nation. People from every corner of our country and every walk of life are here, united by our shared vision for the future of our country.
Now, Joe, as you mentioned, that was a surprise appearance by Vice President Harris. We didn't expect to hear her last night. As for later tonight, the vice president will hold a rally in Milwaukee, of course, battleground Wisconsin, a critical swing state, not very far from here, Joan Savannah.
And Gabe, tell us what else we will see today at the convention. What's the theme? Who are we expecting to hear from?
Well, the theme for today's DNC will be a bold vision for the country. And this is what Democrats are trying to look forward here, not looking backwards, according to campaign officials. Now, we do expect to hear from the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, as well as Michelle Obama, former First Lady, of course, as well as former President Barack Obama. The introduction later today will be given by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who greeted the president yesterday as he flew into Chicago.
All right, Gabe, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be talking over the next few days.
Let's bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good to have you with us. So in a new piece this morning for NBCNews.com, you say that many of last night's speakers, quote, tried to balance paying tribute to President Biden's career while also propelling Vice President Harris into the stretch run of this campaign. You say tried. Did they succeed? What were your takeaways from day one?
Yeah, great question, Joe. And good morning, Savannah. I think that for the most part, they did succeed. There's nobody who's going to be voting for Joe Biden again. And so this was a moment, I think, for a lot of these speakers on behalf of Kamala Harris and Kamala Harris herself last night, an opportunity to try to bring in folks who are, still allegiant to Joe Biden supporters who might be still a little bit sore about what happened with the switch of candidates. But this is a party that, has, 85 days or so to get its new nominee ready. And I suspect that much of the rest of this convention is going to be about Kamala Harris and propelling forward.
John, as we just discussed, of course, we also heard from Hillary Clinton, 2016 Democratic nominee, who lost to Donald Trump that year. Let's play a little bit of what she said.
We're not just electing a president, we're uplifting our nation. We're opening the promise of America wide enough for everyone. Together, we've put a lot of cracks in the highest, hardest glass ceiling. The future is here. It's in our grasp. Let's go win it.
As Joe mentioned, brief remarks, but walk us through what we heard from her, how important her appearance was, what her message was, how she was received by the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, she really gave sort of a brief mention of Joe Biden, very laudatory, but really just a little bit, and moved straight into basically a history lesson on the empowerment of women in this country, from getting the right to vote to Shirley Chisholm running for president in 1972. Through her own historic candidacy, Hillary Clinton being the first woman nominated by either major party for the presidency. She lost to Trump, folks will remember, in 2016. And then, an endorsement of Kamala Harris. One of the things she said was when she looks through that glass ceiling, what she sees is Kamala Harris holding her right hand up and being sworn in as president of the United States in January of 2025, and then a call to action for the crowd to help make that happen.
John, another busy day ahead. These are such scripted, produced events, but anything you're looking forward to?
I mean, I'm looking forward to getting some sleep at the end of the I think it'll be fascinating to see what President Barack Obama says tonight. He is somebody who put Joe Biden into the vice presidency, who was at times not super supportive of Biden running for the presidency, and somebody who, wasn't necessarily the first to jump on board the Kamala Harris bandwagon when it was clear that Biden was going to step aside. So what he says tonight, I think, will be very interesting.
You can sleep in mid-November, John. All right?
Yeah, exactly. 77 days away now.
All right. Appreciate you, John. NBC News Now will have full coverage of the Democratic National Convention throughout the day. Our extensive live coverage begins today at 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll also have primetime coverage here on NBC News Now, as well as NBC at 10 p.m. Eastern.
And let's stay with Decision 2024 coverage. People in 3 states will head to the polls today to decide who will be on the ballot in November.
Wyoming, Alaska, and Florida are all holding primaries today. There are some races to watch that could have an impact on which party takes control of Congress. For more on today's primaries, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Ali, good morning. Let's start in Florida. It has a closed primary, 2 major races to watch. The first, Republican Senator Rick Scott. He's facing 2 challengers, so how does he look against them? And then who's the favorite on the Democratic side?
This race is likely to shake out, guys, the way that we've always thought it would be and the way that both campaign organizations have been acting like it would. It's going to be Rick Scott at the top of the Republican ticket, most likely, and then we expect Debbie Mucarsel-Powell to be the challenger in Florida. And there's a lot of back and forth about if Rick Scott is beatable. He is not a popular politician in the state, but having covered him for years over the course of many tight elections, specifically when he ran for Senate back in 2018, that's a race that went to an automatic recount. Scott has never won by wide margins in Florida, but he is someone who knows how to campaign methodologically and also make sure that he gets just enough votes to win. On the other hand, though, Democrats are trying to make the case that Florida is still a swing state. It's a tough argument to make. Nevertheless, Debbie Mucarsel-Powell is hoping that having the potential for abortion on the ballot and the fact that Scott is less popular in the state, along with the new headwinds that Kamala Harris brings to Democrats nationwide, they're hoping that they can at least put this state back in play and potentially flip a badly needed red Senate seat blue. This is, again, a very tricky map, though, for Democrats. Florida would be one place that we could see them expand the map, but it might be unlikely.
And Allie, House member Matt Gaetz, who is one of the people that helped push former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy out of his role, also up for re-election, and he's facing off against the McCarthy-backed GOP challenger. That's Aaron Dimmick. How's that shaping up?
This is the last stop on the Kevin McCarthy revenge tour, and his batting average is not looking like it's going to be great, especially because of the 6 out of the 8 Republicans that voted to oust McCarthy last year from the speakership. He ended up backing primary challengers in 4 of them. I covered most of them. Of course, the first one was Nancy Mace in South Carolina. She won her primary decisively. The only notch on McCarthy's belt that he has here is Congressman Bob Good, but McCarthy at that point was on the side of former President Trump. So we'll see if Gaetz ends up being someone who also falls in the McCarthy column. It does seem unlikely. He's well known in the district. It's hard to knock off incumbents in the first place, but there is a certain irony to Gaetz being the final chip in this revenge tour. And that's because these two men just absolutely despise each other. It was true even before Gaetz rallied everyone to oust McCarthy from the speakership, but it is certainly true now. They don't try to hide it. They openly talk about the fact that there is no love lost between these men, but there is a certain irony to Gaetz being the last one and him likely to escape his primary challenger.
Allie, quickly, let's talk about Alaska. That's a ranked choice state. Democratic Representative Mary Peltola, the state's first Alaska Native representative, facing 11 challengers. Her bid for re-election. Does it look like she'll make it through to November?
Also, I believe the first woman to take the House of Representatives seats for Alaska, because there's one to represent the state. I covered Peltola's race back in 2022, got to get on the ground in Alaska, and ranked choice voting is really a system. Now, this is the second election cycle that it's in play, where Republicans are still trying to repeal it. Most voters I spoke to 2 years ago were a little skeptical, a little nervous about something new, but mostly thinking that they had confidence in the system. But it's also a system that rewards people who work bipartisanly, who don't run to the extremes of their party. Certainly, that's the kind of lawmaker that Peltola has been. She is, of course, a Democrat in a red state. That didn't matter when she was challenging the likes of Sarah Palin last time around. But there's a wide field of Republican challengers. We'll see if she's able to make it out. But remember, Alaska, because of its vastness, a lot of people voting by mail, and because of ranked choice voting, it takes a little bit longer to tally. So we probably won't know this one for a few weeks.
All right, Allie Vitale, thank you so much.
It's a guilty plea for George Santos. The former congressman pleaded guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft in connection to his political campaign 2 years ago. The disgraced lawmaker was facing 23 federal charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, and making false statements to the Federal Elections Committee. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles has more on the terms of his plea agreement and what it means for Santos.
Former Congressman George Santos speaking to a crowd of reporters outside of court after his guilty plea.
I understand that there are legal consequences for my actions, and I accept them fully.
The embattled Republican, who became the first sitting member of Congress to be booted from office by his own colleagues in more than 20 years, pleaded guilty to 2 charges, wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. This after federal prosecutors indicted Santos on dozens of charges. While throughout his legal woes, Santos defiantly maintained he was the victim of political prosecution, he showed a different side.
It's clear to me now that I allowed ambition to cloud my judgment, leading me to make decisions that were unethical.
George Santos stood in the courthouse right behind me and finally, under oath, told the truth.
A virtual unknown, Santos rode a Republican wave into office in 2022 with a resume that was built on lies. He bragged about cutting million-dollar business deals that didn't exist and boasted about being a star volleyball player, a sport he never played. A scathing House ethics report accused Santos of deceiving his donors and using campaign cash to fund his lavish lifestyle.
Congressman, what do you say to your constituents?
Excuse me. You guys got to get out of my way.
But despite the embarrassing public spectacle, Santos refused to go away quietly. He was active on social media and sold hundreds of short, personalized videos to fans on Cameo.
Let's talk about Botox for a second.
Santos is scheduled to be sentenced in February. He's facing a minimum of at least 2 years in prison, but could face up to 22 years behind bars.
Ryan Nobles, thank you.
Well, in the Middle East, Israel's military says it recovered the bodies of 6 hostages during an overnight operation in southern Gaza. It comes as negotiations for a ceasefire deal resume today.
Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accepted what's known as a bridging proposal in a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken yesterday. Now the U.S. is urging Hamas to do the same.
NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez is live in Tel Aviv with the latest for us. Raf, good morning. What do we know about Israel's overnight operation and the recovery of those bodies? Let's start there.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. Israel's military says it was operating on precise intelligence, that it carried out a raid in the city of Han Yunis in southern Gaza overnight, and it came back with the bodies of these 6 male hostages. Now, we already knew that most of these hostages were dead already, either killed on October 7th or had died in the months since. But among them was 79-year-old Avraham Munder. He was a grandfather who was kidnapped along with his wife, his daughter, and his 8-year-old grandson, Ohad, on October 7th. Ohad and the 2 women came out of Gaza in that first ceasefire deal back in November, and we have spoken to the family many, many times over the last 10 months. They campaigned absolutely tirelessly, hoping to bring their grandfather home safely, but it was not to be. They now have his body, and we expect that they will lay him to rest in the coming days. Guys.
Ralph, let's talk about the ceasefire negotiations. Hamas has said it's not going to attend those negotiations today. How is that going to impact the timing of a potential agreement, and what would happen if an agreement's not reached?
So, Joe, as you know, the format of these talks has never been Israel and Hamas sitting at the table across from each other. So the fact that Hamas is not physically showing up in Cairo is not in and of itself a deal breaker. But Hamas is making very negative signs right now about this American proposal. Israel has accepted that proposal, according to Secretary Blinken, but Hamas says it makes too many concessions to Israel. For example, Hamas is saying it allows Israeli forces to remain on the Gaza-Egypt border. So at this point, Secretary of State Blinken continuing to crisscross the Middle East. He says he is determined to get this deal done, but it looks right now like he only has buy-in from one side. So it is really not clear right now what the path forward is. In terms of what happens if there isn't a deal, the fighting continues, the hostages remain in captivity, but also Iran appears to have been holding off on its threat to strike Israel in retaliation for the assassination of that senior Hamas commander in Tehran. If these ceasefire talks break down, then there really isn't any reason for Iran and its Hezbollah allies to hold off. Guys.
Raf, of course, a major concern here has been just the sheer number of civilians in Gaza who have died, who have been impacted by this. We also now know that more than 200 humanitarian workers specifically have been killed in Gaza. That is according to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. They also note that is the highest number of UN aid workers that have died in any conflict or any natural disaster since the UN began operations. How's Israel responding to claims it's not doing enough to protect civilians?
Yeah, it's just an extremely grim toll, Savannah. The message from Israel has been pretty consistent since the beginning of the war. They say they are fighting an extremely complex conflict against an enemy who deliberately hides among the civilian population inside of the Gaza Strip. They say that they take measures to reduce civilian casualties, for example, creating this humanitarian zone on the coast. They say they try to use smaller munitions when they can. But what we are hearing over and over and over again from the United Nations, from other humanitarian organizations, is that simply Israel is not doing enough to keep civilians safe. And you are hearing that not just from the aid community, but from President Biden, from Vice President Kamala Harris, who say that while they support Israel's right to defend itself, the Israeli military and the government absolutely must do more to keep innocent Palestinians safe. Guys.
Ralph, thank you so much. Time now for weather. While the Northeast dries out, dangerous heat is spreading across the South.
This morning we have Angie Lastman with us here on set. Angie, good morning.
Hi, good morning, guys. We got a heat dome going on, and that basically just means we're kind of stuck in this pattern where we've got plenty of heat confined to parts of the South, specifically much of Texas included in these heat alerts this morning. But we've also got this stretching across parts of the Southwest where plenty of those alerts are in effect this morning. They're going to stay in effect likely for the next couple of days. Honestly, we have multiple chances to beat some of these record highs across this same region. So Phoenix will be one of those spots. We'll see San Angelo, Austin, up through Amarillo, Albuquerque included in that, as well as down towards the coast for Galveston. And these are just some of the spots that we could watch potentially break those record highs through the end of the work week. Today, though, here's what you're expecting. Las Vegas, 110 degrees, running above normal across most of this region. We'll hit the high 90s in Albuquerque. El Paso heads to 103. We've got 101 for Midland. So you get the picture. It's really warm for that area. It's a lot cooler and much cooler than it should be for this time of year across a good chunk of the Northeast, stretching into the Midwest. Even the Mid-Atlantic is going to be included in these cooler than normal conditions here over the next couple of days. So how cool? Well, temperatures only topping out into the low 70s in Chicago, where folks are, of course, at the DNC. We've got 71 in Detroit, running 10 degrees below normal there. 7 degrees below normal in New York City. It's only going to hit 76 degrees today. You probably walked outside this morning in some of these spots and noticed the cooler air that is in place. That will last for a little while longer before we start to get back to more typical types of temperatures in that region as we get into the weekend. But Florida, you have a little rain in the forecast. We've dried out for most of the Northeast, but the rain is going to be confined really to parts of the Rockies where we have some thunderstorms. But Florida, not so much the severe risk that we're watching for, but instead the heavy rain as we see a stationary front kind of just hanging around over the next couple of days. So it keeps it kind of unstable. It'll leave us with the chance for some of these downpours to cause some localized flooding, and that'll be something we watch at least through the day today, guys, and into Thursday. We'll have the potential to pick up a couple of inches of rain, so some flooding in those typical flood-prone spots. In that.
Right. Angie, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.